Hi, kindergarten and first grade. Miss Kathy back with a few more pilgrim stories. So we finished talking about, I was just going to ask you a couple of questions about the last reading. Review. Remember in Holland, the pilgrim men worked indoors instead of on farms. Do you remember where they worked? Some of the places? Can you remember? In the mills, in woolen mills, in linen mills. So they had to work inside. What were some of the changes the pilgrim parents saw happening in their children in Holland which saddened them? Remember? What did they like to do? They were becoming like Dutch children. They were speaking the language. They were wanting to dress like them. They were just acting like them, and they were losing their English heritage. That was important to them. Also, I bet the pilgrims were concerned they would start believing some of the ways that the Dutch believed, or the children in Holland did, which didn't always honor God the way they believed they should, or the way they felt or believed the Bible told them to. Name two things the pilgrims had heard about the new land called America. Do you remember? What were some of the things that they'd heard? Well, they heard that there were Indians living in the forests, and they were scared about that. But they also heard that they could have land and have farms of their own. They could worship God any way they wanted. Let's see. What else did they talk about? They talked about that there were no cities or towns, or any mills where they could buy timber for their cottages. They would have to cut down their own trees, build everything, start from the beginning, as if you're just going to a land that has nothing that you've been used to. No evidence of society or people living together. No neighborhoods. It'd be like if we just drove out to the country and went, okay, here's a field. Let's find some trees to cut down and start building a house. Like Robinson Crusoe. Seems like there was something else. But, and remember who went first? Who was going to go first to America? The men. And then the women and children were going to come a little bit later. Okay, let's start reading the next chapter called The Sword of Miles Standish. And here's a picture to start out with to show you. This says Miles Standish and his companions. So take a look at that. All right, let's read this. Among those who went to John Robinson's church was Captain Miles Standish. He was an Englishman, but he had lived many years in Holland, where he went to help the Dutch fight for their freedom. Once, while he was fighting in Holland, some soldiers went to the house of an old man who made swords and armor. They took some of the armor and were threatening to harm the old man and his daughter. Captain Standish saw them and shouted, "You cowards, to steal from a poor old man! Cowards, give back everything you have taken!" And the rude soldiers obeyed him. Then, to the trembling old man, he said, "No harm shall come to you, so do not be afraid. Your life is safe, and your daughter, too, is free from danger. Go back to your shop in peace." The old man could not thank him then. His heart was too full. But that night, Miles Standish heard a knock at his door. When he looked out, he saw the old sword maker standing in the darkness. He had something carefully wrapped in his cloak. "Captain Standish," he said, "you are a brave, brave soldier. You are more than that. You are a kind and noble man." Then, holding out the gift he had brought the man, said, "Take this sword and take it with the heartfelt thanks of an old man whose life and whose daughter you have saved. Miles Standish could not refuse without giving pain, so he took the man's gift. So in other words, if he refused it, it would be rude and it would hurt the man's feelings in his heart. It would cause pain to the man, so he didn't want to refuse. It was a fine old sword which had been made in the Far East hundreds of years before Miles Standish was born. On one side were engraved the sun, moon, and stars. On the other side were some words written in an old language. The captain thanked the man and said, "This sword shall always be my friend. It shall always be ready to help those who are in trouble." He named the sword Gideon, and he sometimes spoke to it as though it were a friend. Has anybody ever heard of the story of Gideon in the Bible? You'll have to look it up. It's in the book of Kings. But Gideon was he was an Israelite, and he was having to face an army that was huge of the Philistines, and they had been ravaging the Israelites' country for years. And God came to Gideon and said, "Gideon, you're a mighty man of valor." But Gideon was like, "No, I'm not. I'm a scaredy cat," basically. And he was hiding, and God had to encourage his heart and tell him, "No, Gideon, I have a plan for you, and I have a purpose for you, and you're going to win a great victory in battle." And he did. He didn't even use a sword. He used some pitchers and some torches. It's pretty crazy. If you have a children's Bible, go look up the story of Gideon. So that's funny that Miles Standish named his sword Gideon. The captain thanked the man and said, "Okay, but now the war was over, and though it had been 10 years since Miles Standish had needed Gideon, it always hung at his side." He always wore it, like soldiers did. Captain Standish often talked with the Pilgrims about their plan of going to America. He thought about the natives who lived in the new land and about the ships from other countries which might try to take their town. "I will go with you to your new home," he said. "There may be work for Gideon and me." That's pretty funny. During the months of preparation for